Hello again in this video clip series called My Journey to God in a Very Secularized World. I want to continue to talk on this attack in a sneaky way on the Eucharist to finally arrive to totally take away the Eucharist from all of us. I'd like to talk here about our monthly day of retreat on October 7th, 2020. For all the priests and deacons of the Diocese of Perugia, Italy, Cardinal Gualtiero Bassetti, the president of the Italian Episcopal Conference, invited Abbot Ildebrando Ciccolone, OSB, to offer us a meditation. This Abbot Ildebrando Ciccolone, OSB, blazoned liturgists and fixed guests for the weekly liturgies of the CHE, the Italian Episcopal Conference, who goes around Italy to teach the catechist. He said, listen to this, he says, if one does not believe that there is the body of Christ in a host, in reality, you eat only bread. He says this. It's totally opposite of the teaching of the church. And he's the one invited around Italy to brainwash us poor priests. He says it's only bread. He says that the sacrament does not arrive, but not only in the sense that it is not arrived at in the sacrament, but also that in that bread there is not Jesus. I mean, he's totally saying it's nothing. If you personally don't believe, I mean, the truth is based on God, the objective truth of God. Now he's saying the reality is based on how you believe, not by God or who created the world or tangibly. And he says if one does not believe it, the presence of Jesus in the Eucharist does not depend on what a human being thinks or believes. It depends on God. Have we totally lost the faith? And there are no bishops to protect the sheep from the wolves, such as Abbot Ildebrando Ciccolone? There is nothing new under the sun. Most Protestants have had similar beliefs for centuries. The pastors are forced in Italy, the Cardinal Vallini, to buy the so-called the Eucharist. The Eucharist makes the church, which has all these heresies inside. The pastors are forced to buy this junk. And it's edited by this abbot, which is full of liturgical inaccuracies and doctrinal errors that must be given to each catechist in all of Italy. We find in this new catechism a reduction of the Eucharistic realism to consider, that is, the Eucharist almost only a rite of communion, of socialization, forgetting very easily that in the Eucharist there is truly present Christ risen with his risen body. The Eucharistic doctrine of Ciccolone is perfectly superimposable to that of Chico and Carmen of the Neocatechumenal way, since the liturgist that was his teacher is of the same school of the innovators of the post-conciliars that greatly impressed the young Carmen, who was one of the founders of the Neocatechumenal way. Compare Ciccoloni's teaching aid with the Catechism of the Eucharist that Chico and Carmen hold during the retreat of the Amen. It's called the Convivenza del Amen. At the end of the initial catechism, one does not find any difference. The substitution of the dogmas of faith in the redemption and in the expiatory propitiatory sacrifice of Christ with the Father, with the paschal mystery of passage from death to life of the Lord, which makes them say that it is not with the Holocaust of Christ on the cross by which we're saved, but only by his resurrection from the dead. Because of this, the Mass is no longer an all-consuming contemplation, adoration of the offering of love of a God who is consumed for us, to which we unite our little personal cross. But it becomes a jolly festival banquet of the remembrance of Easter that draws everyone from death to life, without any importance given to how much this giving of life to us cost Jesus. It's all over the church today. As Archbishop Athanasius Schneider said, he wrote this article, "The Neo-Catechumenal Way, a Trojan Horse in the Church." You know, contrast this with the teaching of the Church regarding the Most Holy Eucharist in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, which you can read paragraphs 1356 to 81. In a certain sense, what Ciccolone is teaching is worse than what most Protestants believe, because according to Ciccolone, the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist depends on the subjective sentiments of each person, as if each person is God. Relativism, total relativism. When God thinks of something, that something becomes reality. Ciccolone is really saying that each one of us is God. If you want to have more details on this, read my article that's called "Priests Systematically Brainwashed." In another article I wrote regarding the Eucharist, the title was "Italy Will Soon Lose the Eucharist." I wrote, "The saints tell us that the Catholic Church is the soul of the world. Above all, what sustains the Church is the Holy Eucharist. Even though the great majority of the baptized Catholics have lost their faith in the Eucharist, Satan knows very well what the Eucharist is, and that it is the Eucharist above all which restrains Satan," as St. Paul talked about in the second letter of the Thessalonians chapter 2. Satan already deprived the Protestants of the Eucharist 400 years ago, just as Satan did for many disciples of Jesus in John 6:66, 2,000 years ago. Thus, we are finally quickly arriving to the great prophecy to which Jesus referred to in Matthew 24:15, and the book of Daniel. In the book of Daniel it's written, "And from the time that the continual burnt offering is taken away, and the abomination that makes desolate is set up, there shall be 1,290 days." This prophecy of losing the Eucharist in the public churches for 1,290 days must be worldwide, not just in Italy. My guess is that soon the world elite will they'll do it in such a way as to, maybe they might cause chaos, confusion, in many ways to justify and to bring forward, so that as few people possible realize that they're losing the Eucharist. You can find this also in my other articles. Perhaps there's a real possibility that the elite, on their way toward the world dictatorship, will succeed in causing even civil wars in America, and it's a real possibility, perhaps even that they'll assassinate important people to get our mind off of what's the most important thing the devil wants, is to take away the Eucharist. I wrote in my article, "Coronavirus, True Hope, Not False Hope," I wrote that I believe, my opinion, that there is a real possibility that that things will speed up a lot after Pope Benedict is taken out of the way. You might read some of my articles to discover that Pope Pius X, he told us very clearly that the Pope in the future that would be killed would have his same name. Pope Pius X, his name was Joseph Sarto. So what Pope Pius X was saying, in the future, a Pope Joseph will be killed. Of course, the mass media didn't tell us that he was killed, but he just kind of died. And then I believe at a certain point, I believe also that all the priests and bishops of the world will be forced at least under whatever, to take a oath of blind obedience to the false pope, which would be in a preparation for then obeying a liturgy that's no longer valid. And also I believe that there will be a great persecution, in particular against the few priests and bishops who do not obey the blind oath of obedience to celebrate this invalid Mass. It's interesting that Padre Pio talked about a particular month of May that would be very difficult, a month that would not be forgotten, he said. I end this video clip here. May God bless you and Mary guide you.